Great. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really happy to be among some nice friends and to actually have the chance to chat about this topic, because what has happened at Hostwriter in the last year is that we had the chance to learn a lot about some of the challenges facing cross-border reporting and to try to readjust. So just to give a little bit of background, as Darina mentioned, our network, hostwriter.org, is a journalism network of around 5,700 journalists in 153 countries. So we have major hubs in Nigeria and India, all throughout Europe. And the idea of the network is to facilitate cross-border collaboration. So our original thing, in fact, you said like couch surfing for journalists, that was kind of the idea behind Hostwriter. One of the reasons why we felt like something like that was necessary is because there is this sort of unfairness inherent in the journalism system, the journalism ecosystem, where people who are from large networks, large outlets have a whole group of people that will set up international travel for them. We'll find them hotels, we'll hook them up with people to talk to, and we'll hire them fixers. And of course, also give them places to stay. But people who are young journalists who also want to work on cross-border reporting don't always have accesses to those kind of resources. So our idea was to make something that would kind of even the playing field a little bit, allow journalists to help one another. And rather than helping people by saying, okay, you should hire fixers in that country, our idea was, if you go to another country, go collaborate with another journalist that's on the ground. You're going to get probably a better story out of it, and both of you will have a chance to publish. So actually work together with local journalists. Don't hire people as fixers. Don't do this parachute reporting. Learn how to collaborate and make better stuff. And that was our original idea. And it has always been a large group of people who take advantage of the network for that. And just for those of you who are listening, Hostwriter is free and will always be free to join as a journalism network. We don't collect your data, and you can always post on there, on our kind of journalism messaging board, about whether you require some assistance, a place to stay, or some advice on a topic. That's something that will always stay a part of our network. So we recognize, though, that while we were like having this kind of fantasy dream about how great it would be when reporters all work together, that there's some other things that are stopping people from working together across borders. That is not just the problem of they don't know a journalist in a certain country exists. There's also a sort of, just like there is in all sorts of other angles of society, people have discriminatory impulses towards people from certain ethnic backgrounds, from certain races, from certain genders. This is really true East-West also, even within Europe, that there's this kind of disrespect towards journalists from certain countries, that they cannot have as high of a quality. And there's not only that sort of mental barrier, but there's also the actual physical barrier, which is that people from some countries are not able to travel as easily as people from other countries are. And this has always made a very unequal playing field for journalists, say from North Africa, who would like to travel to Europe to cover the migration crisis. We'll really have a difficult time getting a visa to do so, whereas journalists from Europe will always be able to go to Africa and travel around. So just this is an example of a kind of unseen barrier that exists within the field of cross-border journalism that stops some stories from being told, or stops stories from being told in certain ways. So we decided to write a book on this subject called Unbiased the News that we published in 2019. And we were in the middle of kind of promoting this book and doing everything on this topic when the coronavirus hit. And this was really a problem for our finance structure, because we rely on these conferences and we relied on book sales and events and things like that to meet people and to draw in new funders. But in another respect, we kind of thought, oh, this is actually great, because now people will be forced to, it wasn't great, there's nothing great about the coronavirus, but we thought in terms of journalism that this might actually force people to start working across borders with each other. Because instead of sending your team across borders, when you can't travel, you're going to have to rely on local journalists. That's what we thought might happen. And so we even applied for a grant to do a sort of COVID matchmaking service. You're writing a story about, abortions in Nigeria. Here's a journalist there who has a background in this, hire them. And instead of, when you can't travel there, you can actually get this done yourself. What we found out, though, is that there is really a lot of hesitancy to work with people from other countries. There is also, even within your own country, hesitancy, as long as you don't actually know the person. If they haven't either published at a major outlet that you respect, like The Guardian or New York Times or something, or if you don't actually physically know them, which is what we heard over and over again, like, how can you trust people that you don't know? And I was like, I'm so confused. Don't you always have to trust people that you don't know? Don't you always work with people basing on their work, not based on the fact that they're like your cousin or something? Like, I don't know anyone I worked with on so many different outlets. I don't personally know them, but it turns out that there is really this kind of hesitancy, and substitute for knowing someone seems to be knowing someone's in their network. Like they went to the same college as you, or one of the top Ivy Leagues or something like this, or they have published at the same places. That seems to be a good substitute for people. So we found that this is a really big barrier for the kind of stories that they're getting told, because someone that is known gets actually much more opportunities, even if they're a shittier journalist, than someone who's a great journalist but doesn't know the right people, isn't in the right network. So between the funding issues that we were facing and the fact that we were kind of recognizing this over and over again, we decided that we wanted to start something different. So we have launched this newsroom, or we haven't launched it yet, my apologies. We will launch it in middle of March, our call for pitches. And we're going to try and do things a little bit differently, trying to address some of the barriers that are already present in the newsroom that we uncovered in our book, the kind of things that stop people from getting the opportunities that they deserve in the newsroom. And in addition to that, we're going to have an international team of editors that are helping us to work on, to identify the right stories. So our call for pitches will come out in March, and we're hoping that we're going to get like basically some different stories from all over the world. It's an experiment though, and we don't know how well it will work, but we are hoping to kind of also force a little bit this issue that we believe that people should be judged on the quality of their work, that they should also be given a chance even when they don't come from the right university, country, or have the first native language is English or something like that, that people who bust it and write great stories should have the chance to get those stories out there regardless of those issues, and to kind of give an extra push for those things to actually take place, and to also push the stories further by trying to find collaborative angles for different stories. So this is kind of our aim. And it's based, of course, on this background that has been an interesting growing experience for us to learn a lot about some of the no-go zones, basically, of cross-border journalism and what barriers still exist, even for people who are really international and really spend a lot of time in other countries, that there's still some stuff that people kind of don't connect on. And that's what we're trying to push back against and see if we can make something different happen because of that. So that's the basic idea. And yeah, of course, I'll be really happy to talk about it more if people have questions, or to dive into the ways that it connects to some of the other folks that are here tonight talking about their projects.
And I'm sure everybody will have a lot of questions. I have just one, and if I may, I will ask it, and then we'll have more questions at the end. And Jakub's question included, of course. Yeah, so my question is, so you're saying that people should trust people, their colleagues, based on the quality of their work, but so how are you planning to ensure the quality of the work of for example, as an editor at The Fix, I would probably gladly commission a partner with a journalist to make, let's say, a report about the situation of media in Uganda. But how would you ensure that I do get the fact check sources and the all what goes with the quality of journalism?
Yeah, well, the first thing is that what has happened, or what I've noticed a lot, is that the kind of credit that is extended to journalists from certain countries is not extended to journalists from other countries. And that's also true in Europe for journalists from Southeast and Eastern Europe, that they don't get the same kind of credit, the assumption that they're actually going to do good work that you would automatically get when you're from like Germany or something. Even though one of the most famous journalistic liars of all time is Relocius, right, from Germany. So regardless of who you work with and how well you think you know them and how many accolades and prizes they have or whatever, there is always risk inherent in every collaboration and risk inherent in every partnership. That's why I think it's really important to have kind of the opportunity to kill a story if you get halfway through it and realize like, okay, this person's not on the up and up, even if their pitch was fantastic, even if I thought that all of their previous writing was great. So there is no way to ever ensure totally trust. But one of the ways that I think that you can ensure fact checking is by having more diversity on your team. Because one of the ways that people can really slip things through is by going into a newsroom where no one knows anything about the country that they're writing about. Then if you make up something totally outrageous, like, oh, he just said something crazy, you're not, this is very outrageous, no one can fact check it. And that was the thing that happened with the Relocious case is, oh, an illegal immigrant wants to vote for Donald Trump. And, you know, this is how crazy Americans are and yada, yada, yada. Later, people read the article because it was in German. He thought no one would read it. Later, people read the article and they were like, that's not what happened. And if you don't have people that are from that have a variety of different backgrounds, then you can get away with pushing a lot more unlikely shit. Whereas if you have people from a variety of different backgrounds, that's also a fact-checking mechanism in itself. Like, wait, I've been to that country. That's not how people behave there. This story, something doesn't smell right about it. So the hope is that you have to use, of course, your traditional fact-checking measurements, but also that having more diversity on the team allows people to kind of have some insight and context that allows them to be better positioned to fact-check things than if you're in a situation where people who all come from the same background all of a sudden want to work with someone from a totally different background. Yeah, you're not very well positioned to fact-check them, and you have to rely on trust that maybe isn't there yet. And that's a challenge.
I think